Tonight, the manifesto promise to the people of Cape Coast that has placed the president family at the center of a major controversy. After he denied today he never promised to build a harbor for residents in the central regional capital.
People of Cape Coast, I have good news for you. We are building a new harbor in Cape Coast.
So as far as the harbor, we have to be very clear in our mind. We never committed ourselves. I never said I was going to build a harbor in Cape Coast. I said I was going to build a landing site.
Plus a raging political tussle over the controversial Commander Sugar Factory. We'll tell you when government says they will finally get the factory up and running.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Vodafone. Together we can. It was a central manifesto promise to the people of the central region, a major swing region that will see two major projects if the MPP won the last elections. The first was a promise to build a harbor for the regional capital, Cape Coast. And the second, also pretty controversial, was one to build a new airport. Well, President Akufo-Addo indeed won more votes in the central region than the NDC's John Mahama. But today, the president is firmly at the center of a major controversy after he declared on a local Cape Coast radio station that he never promised to build a harbor. The president has been touring the region today. Listen to him speak in Cape Coast today.
First of all, there's a clarification. The commitment was never to a harbor. It was to a landing site.
Okay.
It's very, very important. And you look inside the MPP, page 88 of the MPP manifesto for the 2020 election, it was clear. And there are several landing sites that we have in the central region that are ongoing. Let me read you some of them. Of the landing sites that they have. And there's the first phase of the landing sites in the central region. Involves Sinyabreku, which is what, 92, nearly 93% complete. Elmina, 13% complete. Moray, 78% complete. Winneba, 57% complete. And Gomoa Fete, 90% complete. And Mumford, 79, 80% complete. So that is the first phase of the landing sites that we're going to build. The second phase includes Cape Coast. And the idea would be that, once again, next year, that initiation will take place. So as far as the harbor, we have to be very clear in our mind. We never committed ourselves. I never said I was going to build a harbor in Cape Coast. I said I was going to build a landing site, like what I've done in these 6 other places in the central region. Cape Coast also will have its own landing site, and the construction of that will begin next year.
So that is President Akufo-Addo today in Cape Coast, categorical that the promise was not to build a harbor. We've been fact-checking that, looking at the same manifesto he referenced. I want to bring in a member of our research desk now, Kweku Asante, joins me in the studio. Kweku, so the president was categorical, like I said, clarity that he never promised to build a harbor in Cape Coast. What did we find in the party's manifesto?
All right, so if you look at page 160 of the 2020 NPP manifesto, there's a clear message there that says that they were going to embark on a number of infrastructure, road and other things. At page 160, it says they will commence the construction of the Eastern Rail Line, the Dradin to Obuasi lines, the Ghana-Burkina line, but also a new harbor in Cape Coast and also a new airport in Cape Coast. So a new harbor in Cape Coast and a new airport in Cape Coast. But we also know that the MPP chose the Central Region Capital as the place to launch their 2020 manifesto. At that venue, the Vice President actually mentioned this.
People of Cape Coast, I have good news for you. We are building a new harbor in Cape Coast and a new airport in Cape Coast. It is very critical that we do that. An airport makes a lot of sense in Cape Coast. It's a real tourist hub, and between Greater Accra, Kumasi, and Cape Coast, you have a triangle that really is a lot of hub of economic activity. You can build railway lines between them, and it's a major growth pole if we put an airport here to drive infrastructure growth.
So to be clear, this is Baumia, who, by the way, chaired the Manifesto Committee, making the categorical pronouncement. We'll talk about shortly the update the president gave on the status of the Cape Coast Airport. But on the harbour, he was clear.
As I said something, Tony.
People of Cape Coast, I have good news for you. We are building a new harbor in Cape Coast and a new airport in Cape Coast.
So it was clear on both counts.
Right.
The harbour was there. And not only was this expressed verbally, as you just articulated in page 160, it was also in print.
Right. So
in the
page
manifesto.
160, it's clear among the number of infrastructure they said they were going to construct in the western area of the country, the Duardin to Obuasi lines, a new harbor in Cape Coast, and also a new airport in Cape Coast.
Now, the president also said in this interview that they did not promise to build a harbour, but they promised to build landing sites.
Right.
Is that also accurate?
Right. So the 2020 manifesto also has something on this. They said they had already started constructing some landing sites in 10 fishing areas in the western and central regions: the Axem, the Discof, Senyabreku, Gomuafete, Mori, Mamford, Teshi, Winneba, Elmina, and Keta. Construction of Jamestown Harbour was also started. So they were giving an overview of the landing sites that they said they were going to construct at Cape Coast, Mamford, Teshi, and other places in the country.
So it is factually accurate when the president says we did promise to build landing sites. That you can find in page 88.
Right.
of
But it's
the-
false
it's
if
false.
the president says they did not promise to build a harbour in Cape Coast.
Okay. Quickly, thank you very much for that. The second leg of the promise, with the two main, considering that the president is touring the Central Region, two main promises they made to the people of the Central Region had to do with, one, the harbour, and the second was the airport. That also came up in this interview, and this was the update the president gave on that. He says, as for that, they are committed to it and they plan on proceeding.
The airport.
Yes.
The airport. I think the consensus is now the idea is to build an airport for the western region, to build an airport for the central region, or to look at the possibility of building an airport situated between the two, which people of both regions would have access to. And that's the decision that has been taken. The studies about the location and the throughput are all ongoing. In fact, I believe in the case of the airport, it's virtually complete. Fortunately for you, the airport is also being undertaken by a minister from this area. Siama, who is the Minister of Transport, is the one who will be responsible for it. So the commitment to build the airport in Cape Coast, that one is 100% committed. Work is ongoing on it, and I think very, very soon, just as we have seen with WA has been completed, O has been completed, Sunyani is almost complete. Cape Coast will also get its own airport. It's not a commitment that has been forgotten. The consultants have been engaged, and already the inception report has been handed in to the minister, and he's waiting for the draft feasibility report to be completed. But that it's very much
So that is the president updating the Central Region on that second promise to build an airport. That also was a major manifesto commitment. He says that is going to happen. On the first, obviously, that is what has left this controversy, declaring today that they never promised to build it. The harbour, which, as we've indicated, that Richard has indicated, it is in the manifesto, and there's a contradiction of what the president said today. Now, why do politicians make promises? Because, obviously, it is linked to their political fortunes. And for the Cape Coast specifically, something very interesting, for Central Region specifically, something very interesting happened in the last elections on the back of these two major promises. Parker Wilson, with our political desk, joins me with that leg of this whole unfolding story. So there are two elections that were held on the 7th of December, the parliamentary elections and the presidential election. In the presidential election, the president's face was on the ballot. The two performances for the party were very different. Let's start with the president's performance in the Central Region.
Now, so Evans, I must admit that in 2020, even though there was a slight drop in terms of vote for the president, he, however, still won the Central Region with 52.7%. If you look at the trend analysis from 2016, he won by 53.2, but however, 2020, 52.7, still won. And Mahama in 2016 obtained about 43.4%, and in 2020 had 45.9%. So there was a little bit of increase for John Mahama, but Nanado actually declined. However, he still won the Central Region.
It was a very marginal decline. This is a few percentage points.
A few percentage points, that's
correct. But the
correct.
bottom line is that
he still won,
he won the Central
by
Region
52.7%.
Now, the contrast is interesting because they lost in the Central Region at the parliamentary level. Although they've held overwhelming majority of seats going into the 2020 election.
Evans, the Central Region has 23 constituencies. In 2016, the NPP had almost about 83% of that. So that means they had 19 seats in the Central Region, whilst the NDC had only 4 seats. Fast forward to 2020. Interestingly, the NPP lost 10 seats, in fact 9 seats. So now they occupy only 10 seats, whilst the NDC now in 2020 have a upper hand, which is 13 seats in the Central Region.
So they gained 9 more seats.
So they gained 9 more seats, whilst the NPP lost 9 seats.
Okay. I mean, so if you look at it, the president, on the back of all these promises, Central Region, he himself did well.
He did well.
He won the
Even
election.
though there's a marginal decline.
But he won elections. Alternatively, his
MP
parliamentary candidate didn't perform. You can argue that these two major promises played a part in him performing the way he did in the Central Region. And that's why tonight we are seeing pretty intense reaction to his interview on the ground there. I want to bring in Kojo Nyako, our regional correspondent, who has been following the president today in the region on the back of these controversial pronouncements. Kojo, you followed this. What has the reaction been?
Well, so people are surprised in the Central Region, I must say. I've been speaking with a lot of people after the president made the pronouncements. They said that, it was on the back of the promise. It was not only a promise that was delivered by word of mouth, but it was also given effect in the MPP document, the manifesto. And so they decided to go with the president because they also needed development in the area. So it surprises them that today there is like a U-turn. A U-turn has been made because they say they had the president clearly states that, and the MPP manifesto also mentioned a harbor for Cape Coast. So it surprises them that the president said they never promised the people of Cape Coast a harbor. And so it's left many divided. Many are also silent over it because they do not know what to think anymore.
But apart from that, there were two main promises. The airport, the president updated today that was going to happen. Did that help to deal with people's disenchantment and anger around his first comment about the harbour at all? Does that what's the sense you're getting with the update he gave today about the airport, which he says is coming on?
Well, so the people I spoke to said that, that gave them a sense of hope. The fact that the president expressed it, that they are still committed to building their harbour, but it was left with where they are going to situate it. initially they were thinking of building a harbor for the people of the Western region, and that's for the Central region. But they are also looking at a third option. The third option would be situating the airport in between Cape Coast, the Central region, and the Western region, where the two regions would have access to that particular airport. And so people are still hoping. They feel that once the president has come here, has given effect to what they made, the promises they made in the prior to the 2020 elections, they feel that it is genuine, and so they are waiting for the commencement of the construction of the airport. But all in all, I think that their surprise mainly stems from the fact that the president is saying that they never promised an airport.
Okay, could you stay with me?
A harbor.
A harbor. Could you stay with me? Because there's another controversy surrounding the Commander Sugar Factory. The president has been updating residents of Central Region, the Western Region and the Central Region on this. I'll come to you very shortly about that. But I want to bring in Abeku Adams. He is one of the leaders campaigning for the airport and the harbor and the development of Cape Coast. In fact, they had actually organized protests just to drum home this particular demand before the elections. And of course, and now we know it was part of the manifesto. He joins us on the telephone line right now. Ms. Adams, thank you for your time here on Top Story. Your reaction to what you heard today, the president expressed about the harbor?
It's actually shocking. Like I heard Kujina saying, I mean, it's surprising to hear such kind of contradiction from the president himself. And for some of us personally, it exposes the weakness in our system and how unintentional our governance system is like in Ghana. It tells you that we are just doing anything anyhow just for the political gains that we may get from doing so. So here's the situation we have. The ruling party promising to build harbor in Cape Coast, and it is documented. That's documented in the manifesto. I have it right before me, and I see it in page 160. It is there. And you see, what do you call it? The London site that the president claimed to be the promise they made. It's also in page 88. So it is not like Cape Coasters are confused or misconstruing anything. We saw the two things are in the document. So one cannot be replacing the other. You know, as we see today, it's just an attempt to deceive Cape Coasters. Clearly, it's admission that they lie to us concerning the airport issue.
But he's keeping his word when it comes to the airport. Does that give you any confidence?
Keeping his word as in building the airport for us?
Yes.
Well, telling us he didn't promise an airport and give an impression that you're keeping the word. Which word are you keeping? The word that you didn't give.
I mean, he said he will build an airport. He says that is going to happen. Feasibility studies are underway. The minister is actually from the Central Region, and that will happen.
And that's a new promise he's making, or a fulfillment of a promise he made?
It's a fulfillment of a promise in addition to the harbor that he made.
But it's the case that the president says he promised us a harbor. Or I'm not getting something clearly here.
In the same manifesto, there were two promises. I mean, I know you campaigned for a harbor and an airport, and you got both in the manifesto. He said today, of course, on the controversy surrounding the harbor that he didn't say that. We know that that is inaccurate because it's in the manifesto. But I'm saying on the second leg of the promise, he says he's going to keep that promise. He's indeed said it, and that will happen. Does that assuage your concerns at all?
Not at all. It's another ploy to get our votes for 2024, and we'll not fall for it.
Asking you don't believe that they would actually build the airport?
No, I don't.
Why that skepticism?
Because the first 4 years we saw practically nothing happening in Cape Coast. Then getting to the election, they started the sea defense project, and the sea defense is not personally in the fundamental issue. The sea defense is not anything that should come on the back of political promise. It's an existential imperative that the state should do to protect its territorial line from the sea erosion. So that one, I don't see much as in why the Cape Coast should be excited about a government or a state, the state doing its duties. So that is one. So clearly, if you look at the 5 years so far, there's nothing that the ruling party or the ruling government has done for Cape Coasters to even count on. Everything has been done for the purpose of winning election. And the same way they started the defense, they started a market, small market in Cape Coast. And as a standard, work has stopped. They started a road somewhere in Amina. And right after election, not more than 1 week after election, the contractor came to pass everything. So there's that kind of the stuff that the politicians, both MPs and DCs, keep nurturing in the minds of Ghanaians. And we live so long with this kind of tradition and habit that it raises doubts in our minds. If the president can come back to deny what is already in their manifesto, now in the same breath goes ahead to promise talk of feasibility studies ongoing, please, it is contradictory, and it is reasonable for any reasonable man to doubt the integrity of such a government. So personally, and many of us in Cape Coast do not trust the words of the president. It is a ploy to lure us again into voting for the president, the party in the 2024 election. And we are going to keep our ears on the ground and open our eyes and look at things critically from now on.
Abeku, thank you very much. Well, in just before the elections, together with Imani, we launched the Manifesto Tracker, purposely for this, because of circumstances such as this. And I've just been joined on the telephone line by Franklin Kujo. He heads, founder of Imani, Ghana president of Imani. Franklin, thank you for your time here on Top Story.
It's a pleasure, my good brother.
What's your reaction to this? The mood on the ground in Cape Coast, those who campaign for it, everybody seemed to be disappointed. What's your reaction to this?
Well, if we were going into an election, I would have said we arrive again at the season of the silly. But I just want to ask a quick question. Was the president challenged on this one? Because I think the statement attributed to him quoted him saying, "I never said I was going to build a harbor in Cape Coast." And I'm wondering, did anybody say to him that, "Hey, Mr. President, you said you build a harbor in Cape Coast. Why is the harbor not here?"
Very good question.
I want to understand, because it looks as if, I don't know whether he might have been setting up his own questions and trying to answer. Because in all the conversation you had, I don't think anybody challenged him as to whether he was going to build a landing site or a harbor. Because the backbone of which he delivered the statement, I never, and you know the president is emphatic when he speaks. He speaks in absolute terms. I never said I was going to build a harbor in Cape Coast. The question is, did anybody ask him that, Mr. President, when is the harbor coming?
Yeah. So Kojo Nyaku, who followed this for us and had been traveling with the president, is on the line, so he can clarify that. Kojo, what happened in this? What's the context of this particular pronouncement the president made, and was he challenged when he made this? Hello, Kojo.
Hello, Evans.
Yes. Did you hear the question?
So it was an interview that was conducted on a Cape Coast-based radio station. So it was a one-on-one interview, but the interviewer did not have a follow-up question to the president. So it would have been very appropriate and apt for her to have asked the president, because it is in your manifesto, because the vice president also made a pronouncement. So we were expecting that a follow-up question would have been okay.
So the question was simply about, from what I heard, was simply about, you promised these two things, when are we going to see it? And the president jumped onto the harbor one and then says categorically, I did not make that promise. Franklin, that's the context.
And again, in political communication, these things must be watched, because if I were the president and I wasn't sure, I probably would have said, well, we'll build it incrementally. And I think that a landing site is just a smaller version of a harbor. This is the naughty in me trying to explain what the president should have said. But look, this is not the first time we've seen or heard, let's say, political leaders walking back from their words or walking back from their statements. So it's very important that citizens are this active and vigilant and asking all these very important questions. So for me, I think it's a good conversation to be had. I am not entirely surprised. It looks to me, you remember when we were having those engagements during the elections, we kept saying that there must be some level of coordination at the heart of government when you are tinkering with the idea of launching infrastructure projects. Because there's a need to vet these projects to decide whether they are even viable and profitable in the first place. From the moment where you start having disconcerting voices, as in the vice president saying, we will build a harbor, and the president seems to have forgotten that his vice said we will build a harbor, therein lies the confusion when it comes to the project initiation, implementation, and possibly completion. I'm sure you won't have a conversation about Commander.
Yeah, I mean, the Commander too has. Let's do that now because that has also come up today. The president gave an update on what they plan to do. He described it as an albatross around their neck. Briefly, let's listen to the president what he said about this.
The way forward is what it is that Chairman, the very, very dynamic, energetic Minister for Trade and Industry, has been trying to do. First of all, our inheritance. A lot of money has gone into the Commander initiative. It was important for us, and yet nothing had happened. It was at a standstill when we came into it. The project was heavily overvalued. They then went forward to say that in the light of the overvaluation, they are going to look for interested investors to come, and bids were brought in. An investor was chosen. All the various demands that he was making, the investor was making, at the end, he wasn't able to meet the conditions precedent. So, contract
So that contract has been abrogated. However, he says a new arrangement has now, it's in full swing now, and he's promising that in the first quarter of 2022, the Commander Sugar Factory will be up and running. I know Imani wrote quite extensively about this. What's your take on where we are now, frankly?
Well, I don't think the project was overvalued. The project was undercapitalized by the Mahama administration. The fact of the matter really is that the Commander Sugar Factory, the history around it, is that in the early 70s, the several feasibility studies were conducted, in fact, by the World Bank and some other experts, and concluded that at the minimum, we needed $90 million to revive Commander, including an outgrower scheme for sugarcane plantation. What the Mahama administration did was to have raised, I think, $24 million, and then went to town, claiming that they've revived the factory. Unfortunately, when we told them that that was not going to, that was essentially not enough, they said, well, they were going to go ahead anyway. They started with about 120 acres of sugarcane plantation, and that was woefully inadequate. In fact, at that time, at the least, what the factory needed was about 1,000 hectares of sugarcane plantation. In fact, to ramp up production for the entire throughput of the factory, you needed about 7,000 hectares of sugarcane plantation, right? Now, if you started off by 120 hectares, your guess is as good as mine. So relatively under 2 months, the factory stopped working. So, I mean, of course, the reasons are not, obviously, everybody knows the reason, that it was because of the lack of raw materials, even though the NDC administration suggested otherwise. Fast forward, in 2018, 2019, some agreements were concluded, I think, under this administration. And then there was the same mantra of the prowess of the Minister of Trade who was going to revive and revitalize the Commander Sugar Factory. Of course, we wanted it done because, clearly speaking, we were going to create about 1,300 direct jobs and about 5,000 auxiliary jobs as well. So it was a good thing as part of the industrialization drive. But we had not forgotten that the whole conversation about undercapitalization was not concluded. In fact, the company, I think Agrotech, was set to be was going to commit about $28 million into the now revised Commander Sugar Factory after the NDC version. We never heard anything again. And now we are being told that, well, they left without any note as to why they left. But it was clear they didn't have the money. To be fair, I think the NPP administration decided that they were going to procure about 7,500 hectares of land for the sugar cane, which was a good thing. But, of course, now that's history because we never heard anything again from the company. It's important. I think one of the things we suggested at the time again was that, look, given how much sugarcane was needed and given the profile of the areas that sugarcane was supposed to be grown, the nature of the soil, the nature which could help irrigation, all needed to be taken into consideration. And that even if you added sugarcane from Commander and Asuchari, you really were not going to ramp up production the way we had envisaged. And that we might as well import either raw sugar and refine it in Ghana because we cannot import sugarcane from Latin America because of logistical cost. So in some ways, the major problem that has dogged some of these projects have always been the conceptual design failures.
Yeah, and frankly, I'm grateful that you joined us. This is a subject that we're going to expand on PMX because John Mama has also been speaking about this, and he says, quote to him, he isn't a fool to build a factory like that and not think about raw materials. And he said that he had arranged for the raw materials to come in, and the Indian government was going to sponsor that too. We're going to get into all that on PMS, and I'm grateful that you joined us with your thoughts on this. We just ran out of time on this, but what are your thoughts on this? If you live in Cape Coast in the Central Region, I want to hear from you on Newsnight, which starts right now.
Good evening and welcome to Newsnight. We're live on Love 99.5 FM in Kumasi and a dozen affiliates across the country. We're also live on Facebook and myjoyonline.com in this edition.
Times are very tough. The system is hard and pockets are dry. Car owners are suffering, passengers are suffering, journalists are suffering.
Opposition NDC demands immediate removal of petroleum taxes imposed by the NPP administration, saying it is the cause of the current high fuel prices in the country.
We should call on the Akufo-Addo-Bawumia NPP government to scrap some of the insensitive and bad leadership.
Tonight we hear from government on the increasing demand for those taxes to be scrapped. Every region deserves development, whether they voted for you or not. Paramount Chief of Asagli State to politicians as he calls for a fair distribution of development in the country.
Whether a region votes for you or not, Your Excellency, they will deserve a fair share of the development budget.
We'll hear from former President Mahama, who is blaming the deplorable nature of Volta roads on the government's decision to abandon projects.
Let them not say we're working on 742 projects in Volta region. They should come with a list and name them one by one. Let nobody come and say the projects that I've invested in are bearing fruits. Where are those projects? If they are bearing fruits, we'll see the fruits ourselves.
We have more from the former president's thank you tour of the Volta region and stop under declaring revenues. Greater Accra Regional Minister charges newly appointed MMDCEs. And it's business.
We hear the thoughts of Chairman of Parliament Finance Committee on the current debate as to whether taxes on petroleum products should be removed.
And coming up in sports, we hear from head coach of the Black Stars, Milivan Raivach, as he explains why he and Ghana are the perfect match.
And later, parents of two children found dead in a vehicle at a mechanic shop at Talajo in Accra say they suspect foul play.
For me, I suspect that they are being poisoned because the way I saw them lying down, it's not something like they struggle because there's foam coming out from their mouths, you understand?